So today we're going to be looking at the poem At Home by Christina Rossetti, and we're going to be looking at the theme of sacrifice. So our LO today is to consider how sacrifice is presented in Rossetti's poem. Please can you ensure that you have your poem in front of you, your grid, and of course any contextual notes that you may wish to refer to or add to as we go through the poem. So your entry task today is, what are the things your friends do just in general that you do not approve of? And then when you consider that thing, whatever it may be, do you tell them that you don't approve of it? Or do you just kind of ignore that part of them? So for example, if you've got a friend who is normally absolutely lovely and a gorgeous friend to have, but they have this one annoying habit, like, I don't know, every time you go for a meal out, they're always on their phone texting. Like that for me is an irritant of mine. Do you tell them that you're annoyed by them, or you don't approve of that, or do you just sort of ignore it and just think, oh, that's them? You just sort of leave that habit to them. So have a think about what you consider for that. So the poem At Home. When I was dead, my spirit turned to seek the much frequented house. I passed the door and saw my friends feasting beneath green orange boughs. From hand to hand they pushed the wine, they sucked the pulp of plum and peach. They sang, they jested, and they laughed, for each was loved of each. I listened to their honest chat. Said one, tomorrow we shall be, plod, plod along the featureless sands and coasting miles and miles of sea. Said one, before the turn of tide we will achieve the eyrie seat. Said one, tomorrow shall be like today, but much more sweet. Tomorrow, said they, strong with hope, and dwelt upon the pleasant way. Tomorrow, cried they, one and all, while no one spoke of yesterday. Their life stood full at blessed noon, only I had passed away. Tomorrow and today, they cried, I was of yesterday. I shivered, comfortless, but cast no chill across the tablecloth. I, all forgotten, shivered sad, to stay and yet to part, how loth. I passed from the familiar room, I who from love had passed away, like the remembrance of a guest that tarrieth but a day. Okay, so this is a little bit of a weird and complicated poem, but do you have a think about what you think Rossetti is on about? What do you think the general idea of the poem is? Who is the speaker and what is the speaker expressing? And then the contextual link I've put is that think about her romantic life. So this was written in around 1857. So consider what you know about Rossetti's romantic life. So some contextual information I've just put on the slide for you. So Rossetti's relationship to the pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood meant that she made a lot of sacrifices in her life. She left her first fiancé because he reverted to Catholicism. This poem is about Rossetti noting that her friends are feasting and enjoying life without Rossetti, who in this poem is a ghost looking back on her life. The friends focuses on the immediate gratification, while Rossetti has focused on salvation. So Rossetti's very much like, I'm going to be a good person in life because then I'm going to go to heaven, whereas her friends seem to be, almost like greedy, that they're having the big feasts and they're celebrating and all this because they want immediate gratification, so they're not too bothered about what happens when they die, potentially. So the summary, a dead woman explains how, invisible, she returned to a house full of her living friends. These friends look forward to the trip that they've planned and anticipate reaching the Eyrie seat. The following day, before the tide turns, an Eyrie is a residence or retreat occupying an elevated position or a high vantage point. Whilst the friends look forward to reaching a high vantage point so they can observe the beauty of the coastline, they remain unaware that the speaker has reached a vantage point even higher, that of death. So if you consider the speaker has died and is in heaven, so they've reached the highest point, whereas her friends, they're just excited to reach, the top of a mountain to look over the coast. So it's this different ideas of what people value, I suppose. So the themes there, you've got obviously the theme of death. The speaker's voice comes from beyond the grave. She distinguishes herself from her friends who are alive, yet reveals her reluctance to leave the place where she was once happy. She's trapped in a static position as she is so sad to stay and yet to part, how loath. The theme of love. The question of what constitutes love is one that the speaker attempts to answer throughout the poem. She suggests that the happiness of her friends is only possible because each was loved of each. Their love for one another ensures their comfort and enables their hope to remain strong. The theme of home. Home should be a place of familiarity and of comfort. And in the first stanza, the speaker recalls that her house she passes was once much frequented. It is well known and offered comfort, and now it is not her home. She is unable to experience the warmth it offers. She regrets that her friends do not seem to appreciate the comfort they are blessed with because they are always looking forward to tomorrow. The friends never seem happy with what they've got currently. It's always the next day and the next day and the next day. Whereas the speaker, or Rossetti, is presenting this idea that you should be grateful for what you have. It's a very religious idea. And lastly, ghosts. So although the speaker is speaking from the dead, the poem does not share the same eerie qualities that some of Rossetti's other poems do. Rossetti tells the story. So, for example, in one poem, The Hour and the Ghost, Rossetti tells the story of a ghost competing with a bridegroom for his bride's attention. Now, again, we do not study that poem, so the Hour and the Ghost, in your anthology, but invisible speakers is present within a number of the poems that we will study in the future. So the first stanza then. So when I was dead, my spirit turned to seek the much frequented house. I passed the door and saw my friends feasting beneath green orange boughs. From hand to hand they pushed the wine, they sucked the pulp of plum and peach. They sang, they jested, and they laughed, for each was loved of each. So again, an abrupt opening to shock the reader. So when I was dead, I mean, you can't really argue with that. It's very abrupt. It's shocking. A reader certainly isn't expecting it. So, when I was dead. And the next section, so much frequented house. There's this sense of detachment. It's ironic compared to the title of the poem. So when you compare the title of the poem to this, it does read very oddly. There's this detachment. The feasting, you've got the rhythm change here to suggest the word's importance. The self-indulgence of her friends is evident from the verb feasting. And then you've got a semantic field of colours and rich colours. Green, orange, plum and peach. Very rich colours, again suggesting that indulgence of the friends. They sucked the pulp of plum and peach. You've got sensual overtones there with the plosive alliteration of the p, so pulp, plum and peach. So very sensual, they're again indulging themselves. And that final line there, they're talking of their love lives. So for each was loved of each. They're talking the love lives of those in the brotherhood. They're an artistic group, and yet she was heavily religious. Next stanza. I listened to their honest chat, said one, tomorrow we shall be, plod, plod along the featureless sands, and coasting miles and miles of sea. Said one, before the turn of tide we shall achieve the eerie seat. Said one, tomorrow shall be like today, but much more sweet. So firstly, the honest chat. Rossetti does admires their honesty. The fact that she's listening to it and continues to listen to it, she does admire their honesty. And then you've got the focus on tomorrow. Tomorrow is repeated a number of times in the poem, and they're focusing on that rather than the past. And then finally, the purple sections that I've highlighted for you, they seem to suggest ideas of peace and calmness, and you could argue the link to heaven there. They believe, as in the friends believe, that they will achieve it, which is somewhat ironic considering the next stanza, where Rossetti has met heaven. So tomorrow, said they, strong with hope, and dwelt upon the pleasant way. Tomorrow, cried they, one and all, while no one spoke of yesterday. Their life stood full at blessed noon. Only I had passed away. Tomorrow and today, they cried, I was of yesterday. Again, you've got that repetition of tomorrow there at the start of the first and third line of that stanza. And it contrasts the emphasis her friends place on tomorrow with her identification with yesterday. So that's where she identifies with yesterday. They have hope for the future, while she is very much living in the past. She's part of another world. Their life stood still at blessed noon. She seems to respect their joy. She's not bitter about it. Blessed noon, that's at midday, and it's a metaphor for the highest, as sun is at the highest point of the day. So she is not bitter about their unhappiness, but she just questions that they're not taking life seriously because they need to appreciate what they have. Tomorrow and today, they cried. Again, they seem to be forever deferring religious discipline, which would ultimately lead to their salvation. They don't seem that bothered. They're more focused on the future. And then lastly, the very sad tone of that final line of that stanza. So I was of yesterday, very sad tone. It seems almost as if they have forgotten her. And final stanza. Then I shivered comfortless, but cast no chills across the tablecloth. I, all forgotten, shivered sad, to stay and yet to part, how loth. I passed from the familiar room, I who from love had passed away, like the remembrance of a guest that tarrieth but a day. So you've got the sibilance in the first line, so shivered, comfortless, but cast, that S sound, and it emphasises the discomfort. She is home, but feels zero comfort within it. The no chill across the tablecloth. She wishes for their company and to be remembered, but she will not intrude, and always doesn't want to join in because she doesn't want to be part of their indulgence. And again, she's going on about how she's been forgotten. She's got that sad, miserable tone, so sadness of being forgotten, all forgotten there. And then sad to stay and yet to part, how loath. She wants to stay. She does loathe leaving, but she doesn't want to trouble them by seeing her spirit, because if they saw her spirit, perhaps they wouldn't look as forward to the future as they currently are, and she doesn't want to change them. And then the last three lines that I who from love had passed away, like the remembrance of a guest that tarrieth but a day. She is remembered as if she is a guest in her own house that stayed one day. So what you've got to consider is this theme of sacrifice, and why it's so important to understand the relationship between that theme and Rossetti. So consider what sacrifices Rossetti made in her life and why she made them. And then once you've done that, consider what poems we've studied that have some form of sacrifice within them. So for example, one that comes immediately to mind is the poem Maud Clare, because both women within it have almost somewhat sacrificed their happiness, because Nell knows that Thomas doesn't love her and may never do, and Maud Clare has sacrificed her life because she's potentially pregnant, and that is not good in the Victorian era. When we come to study Goblin Market, you will also see the ways in which sacrifice, particularly women sacrificing themselves, is a key theme that Rossetti presents. If you'd like to do some further research on this poem, there is a poemanalysis.com website which has a lot of additional notes on this poem. And then if you go to the cross references link, the second one down, they have a number of thematic notes on the poem. And then your home learning, can you just make sure that you add your notes to your A3 grid about this poem, because it's quite a key one.